Hello, hi, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing well. So for today's video, what I was thinking I was gonna do is I'm gonna sort of tap and scratch on some belts because some people have told me that they really enjoy belt sounds, but I also want to talk about anxiety and things that I have done personally that have really helped me with my anxiety, and maybe it could possibly help some of you. So without further ado, get into the video. So let me grab a belt here. So when I first started experiencing anxiety, I was about 19 years old. It was like in my early college experience. And I had no idea at the time what panic attacks were, what anxiety was. So the first time that I had one, I really thought that, I was either dying or going insane, which was, as you can imagine, a quite terrifying experience. So luckily for me, around the time I started experiencing anxiety, it was also the time that I was enrolled in this class at my college called Brain and Behavior. And the professor that I had was just absolutely amazing. And he really helped me to find strategies that were actually effective for dealing with my anxiety. And I would like to share some of them with you. So first of all, I think that it's important to talk a little bit about what anxiety is and where it comes from, its origins. So we have this part of our brain. It's a very primitive, very animalistic part of our brain that's deep down in our limbic system, in our brainstem. So this is the part of our brain that's going to control the fight or flight response. And, we're kind of familiar with that fight or flight response. It's when your heart starts racing and your breath speeds up and it produces all these, physiological symptoms that are very real. So that part of the brain was intended to help you when you were feeling unsafe or threatened in your environment, to escape from that threat and get away from whatever was putting you in danger. However, our brains aren't able to distinguish between a perceived threat and an actual threat. And that's what makes things a little complicated. So I remember the teacher asking us on the first day of class something to the effect of, are you 100% safe in this room right now? And me being the worst case scenario kind of person that I am, I started thinking about all these things that could possibly go wrong in the room. There could be an earthquake, there could be an active shooter situation, there could be a fire, just the person next to me could suddenly decide to attack me. So I'm, saying all these things. And he points out to me that that all of those things are perceived threats, but none of them are actually occurring right now in this very moment. And even though that's common sense, I honestly hadn't realized prior to that I was lumping perceived threats and actual threats that were affecting me in the moment as one and the same, and that I was allowing myself to have these physiological responses to perceived threats. And when I really thought about it, 99% of the things that give us anxiety and the things that cause us great stress in our life, most of them are perceived threats. Very seldom are we actually directly under attack in the moment. And if we are, then we obviously have to take the steps to get out of that situation. But most of the time we're worrying and fretting. It's about something that could potentially happen that has not happened yet. So he wanted to point out to us that there are things that we can do that are going to bring us and our awareness and our attention back into the present moment and away from these perceived threats. So what's interesting, though, is it's very hard to talk your brain out of feeling anxious. And that's because it's two very different parts of the brain. Like I explained before, the part that's triggering those anxiety thoughts and fears and that physiological response of the sweaty palms and the racing heart and the shallow breaths, that's in the very primitive part of your brain. And when you try to reason with that part of your brain using like the prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of, rational thought that we use to, make decisions and form complicated thoughts, you're not able to directly communicate very well with this part of your brain in order to control that part of your brain. They're just two very different systems. So you want to do a bottom-up approach. You don't want to use the head to communicate to the head. You want to use the body to communicate to that part of your brain. And I'm going to explain to you how to do that. So what the professor explained is that there are techniques called grounding techniques. And they're techniques that are designed to bring your body and mind back into the present moment and to conjure up feelings of safety and calm that are going to signal to that primitive part of your brain that you are not in danger and that you're safe and that you're in a safe space. So one of the things that he talked about doing is breath control. So our breath is something that happens automatically, but it's also something that we have, control over. And when you're anxious and you're breathing in a shallow way, that is going to send signals to your brain that you are in danger and that you're not safe. But if you're able to start taking some very slow, deliberate breaths, you're breathing in very slowly and you're exhaling very slowly. You get control over your breaths, and there's lots of different breathing techniques, and you can go on YouTube and find some that work for you. I'm not going to go through all of them in this video just for the sake of time, but controlling your breathing is going to signal to your parasympathetic nervous system to become engaged and to start the process of calming you down. So our nervous system is divided into two parts. You have your sympathetic nervous system. That's the part that's in control of the fight or flight response. The part that sends adrenaline and cortisol pumping through our bodies in order to prepare us for this perceived threat, this danger that back when we were, more primitive man might have been a lion or something coming after us and attacking us, and we had to go to battle. So your body's preparing you for that situation. But in 99% of the situations, it's not warranted. We don't need that adrenaline rush. So there's actually ways that are set into the body that are meant to calm the body down. That's your parasympathetic nervous system. And he taught us that, para is like a parachute. It's meant to, slow the fall, calm things down. So there are ways you can activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And what's really interesting is, there's been studies that show that the part of our nervous system that we use more is going to become the more dominant one. So if we are staying kind of in this very vigilant, hyper-aware state, it's going to send our sympathetic nervous system into overdrive, and we can actually learn to keep our bodies in this very stressed out state almost permanently, where we're seeing every single thing as a threat. Everything is just, triggering and constantly activating that fight or flight response. But our brain is like a muscle, any other muscle in the body. And you can do exercises to strengthen it, to help the parasympathetic side to become your more natural state. So you might want to look up on YouTube. There's things called grounding exercises. And they're all just different exercises designed to keep you in the present moment and not feeling all that anxiety about perceived threats. So one grounding exercise that's designed to bring you back to the present moment, I'm sure you might have heard of it before, is to use our senses, which, are tied to that more primitive part of your brain. Use your senses to calm you down. So the first thing you would do is name 3 things that you can touch and to bring your awareness to them and to describe in very, very vivid detail these things that you're touching. So you would say, for example, maybe touch the water bottle. You'd say, I feel this water bottle, and you can feel the water inside is very cool. Maybe there's condensation on the bottle. You notice the weight of it. Really get into detail describing how it feels, the smoothness of the plastic. And do that with, 3 things that you can touch, whether it's your clothes, the fabric of the chair that you're sitting on. You're recentering your brain to the immediate moment through your senses. And then you would think of 3 things that you can see in the room. And you would do the same thing. You would describe them in very, very vivid detail. 3 things that you can hear in the moment. Draw your awareness outside, and perhaps you hear the birds chirping. You can hear some kids outside playing. You can describe all of that in a very detailed way. And you're getting out of all those anxious thoughts. You're just bringing yourself back to the moment. Bringing yourself back to the present moment. It's all very key to be bringing yourself back into the present moment where you are safe and nothing is harming you. And so you want to do these techniques regularly. Techniques that ground you and make you feel safe. Like I said, look some of them up. There's a lot of different strategies. And find some that work for you, whether it's breathing exercises or drawing exercises. There's an exercise, I remember that he showed us that would sort of utilize your visual cortex. There's some people that, might enjoy art, and he explained that, a lot of memories that are traumatic or whatnot are stored in our visual cortex, and that an interesting way of changing that part of our brain is to think of a place where you feel extremely safe. A room, a destination, someplace that when you're inside that place, you feel very protected and without worry. And then you draw that place very detailed, very vividly. And it was important that you spent at least 5 minutes on the activity. I remember him specifying that, 5 minutes was the amount of time it took, I think, for it to process. So it really didn't matter if you were a good artist or if it just looked like scribbles. What was important was that you were picturing this place in your mind for 5 minutes and transcribing it to paper, and that somehow through the process of doing that, you are actually making changes inside the visual cortex of your brain. So we have to remember that our brains are not, they're not fixed in stone. You're constantly developing new neural pathways and new connections, whether you're learning a new instrument, you're learning a new language. Your brain is constantly growing and changing, and you can change it. You are in control. You wouldn't think that, if you walked into the gym on day 1 and did a couple sit-ups, you wouldn't expect that you would leave the gym that day with perfectly formed abs and a 6-pack. And so you don't want to have that same attitude when it comes to, retraining your brain in these sort of ways. These are things that take time. Coincidentally, at the same time that I was taking this brain and behavior class, was also taking some like Eastern philosophy classes in college, and a lot of Buddhist techniques actually are very, very helpful in terms of dealing with anxiety. Because the interesting thing about Buddhism, as opposed to like a lot of Western religions, is it deals with the here and now and how to feel calm and centered and relaxed in the moment as opposed to in the afterlife. So, oftentimes as Westerners, I think we've been, taught about how we can behave and act in the here and now in order to be rewarded in the afterlife. But what's really nice about Buddhism is it teaches you a lot of ways of thinking, but also meditations that can make you feel more at peace in the here and now. And having control through meditation of our thoughts is extremely beneficial for people that deal with anxiety. You might want to get like an app at first that could help you. There's a lot of meditation apps. There's a lot of guided meditations on YouTube. There's a lot of resources. You kind of want to work your way up to a place where you eventually are doing it on your own and your mind is devoid of all thought. It's a very important muscle to develop. Having control of your brain and being able to get to a different, more relaxed state whenever you desire. So, I hope some of these tips were helpful. So I hope some of these tips were helpful. I hope that you'll look up different grounding techniques and find some ways that you can practice on a daily basis of getting your parasympathetic nervous system to be the more dominant of the two. You definitely don't want to be ruled by anxiety. When you're in a constant anxious state, it has a lot of negative effects on the health. It weakens your immune system. You're more prone to inflammation, migraines, exhaustion, digestive problems, all sorts of things. So it's really essential to start training that other side of your brain to be stronger. And it is very possible to do. And I think it's important to note that our thoughts are very powerful. And you don't want to think that you're incapable of doing something. You don't want to think that, that's too hard for me to ever achieve. I think it's very important that you visualize the life that you want to be living, and you hold that image in your mind, and you picture it as a reality, and you're grateful for that reality because you know in your heart that it's going to be true. think it's very important to believe in ourselves, to believe that we're capable. We say a lot of things to ourselves in our own head that we would not tolerate from other people. If other people spoke to us the way that we sometimes speak to ourselves, we would cut those people out of our lives. So just be aware of your thoughts. Be aware of trying to talk to yourself in a kinder, more gentle way. Being more positive with yourself. And being more grateful for the things that we do have. No matter how bad our life gets, there's always something that we can be grateful for. And it's important to focus on the things that we're grateful for. Whether that's being pain-free, having a roof over our head, having food to eat, having family that loves us, friends, whatever it is. There's something in your life that you're grateful for. Focus on that. Don't focus on everything that you dislike. When you wake up in the morning, try to say thank you for something that you're grateful for. It seems like when we come at life from a place of what we don't have and what we feel is lacking, and we walk around with these thoughts of just incompleteness. We're sort of drawing more negative energy towards ourselves. There's sort of an intelligence to the universe, and like attracts like. If you're walking around with all these negative thoughts in your head, and you're walking into a room and thinking, no one's gonna like me when I walk into this room, it ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's like kind of a whole different topic, but just to try to be aware of the thoughts that we think, and meditation can really help with that. Meditation really helps us to become aware of the thoughts that are passing through our heads, bring awareness to them. Well, I hope some of these tips and tricks might help you. Be gentle with yourself, be patient. Remember that Rome wasn't built in a day and nothing changes overnight, that all of us are constantly works in progress. And if you're interested, I urge you to look up ways of strengthening your parasympathetic response. I've always been interested in like the scientific sort of explanations of things, and it helps me personally to feel more in control when I feel like there's things that I can personally do to change the way I feel, think, react, behave. A lot of our responses to things are automatic. There still are things that we can do to change who we are and how we respond to things. So, yeah, take everything I say with a grain of salt. It's just things that have helped me, and I hope that some of it has been helpful and useful for you. I will see you next